So welcome back to part two of the Legal Lean Sigma presentation by Catherine Madonna. Over to you again, Catherine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. Thanks for coming back, everyone. A lot of times people are like, okay, I got the concepts. Some of these tools sound interesting to me. I'd like to know what should I do now? So I want to offer some thoughts about ways that you might get started, because we all know you don't have a second chance to do it right the first time. And what we don't want to do is engage in an activity where people say, oh, we tried that Lean Sigma design thinking, whatever continuous improvement thing, and it didn't work or it didn't stick. So we're never going to try it again. There's like a very low tolerance for risk taking in the first place. And then, things really, we've got to really produce. So whether it's the quick win or a deep systemic change or wow for the client, only you are going to know what's going to be the right thing or right series of things to do. And so for that reason, I will tell you, none of our clients has ever approached doing process improvement and project management work for innovation, transformation, improvement, the same way as anybody else. Even using a tool like process mapping, it's different every single time, which is why I love it so much, because I'm the type of person that I'm just going to say it, I get bored. If I have to do the same thing the same way every day, I just get bored. And then, I get disengaged like most people. So, but what we can do is sort of borrow and learn from how others have approached this. Unfortunately, you've got to really do a good job of getting somebody's attention in the first place, because most of us are caught in what we call the firefighting doom loop, where we start doing our work and then something happens and it doesn't go well or it doesn't go right, and then we have to spend our time fixing something or putting out a fire, and then we have to, as part of that, soothe ruffled feathers and manage relationships. And so consequently, we're so busy doing that, nobody has time to work on making things any better. And around it goes. And clients want more and they want better, but we're still using the same processes that we've always been using. Fundamentally, nothing has changed. So is it just, you can't tell people just speed up and go faster or do more with less as the requirements increase. So the answer really is, looking at the way we're doing things. And so we don't want you guys to be fireys at all. We don't want we don't want this. So it's like, what can we do to prevent it so that you're not spending any of your time? What if we actually gathered everybody together and listened to, here's the full map on the wall. Here are all of the activities. Here are all of the steps. What is causing everybody some pain points? Where are you really getting frustrated? Where are you spending a lot of time? And what's easy? Where have you figured out how to do something really well? That's kind of, where we are. But you've got to convince people, even though they know the check engine light has been on in their car dashboard for the last 150 miles. They are still going through that calculus of, today's not a good day. I am busy. I wonder how much longer I could spend till fixing the car is going to cost me more money and take me more time. That's the calculus we're always doing. So we need to sometimes say, what is the cost of doing nothing? And what I find is that almost always makes a more compelling case than we could do this, and we could do this, and we could do this, and we could do this. Sometimes just asking the question, okay, well, we know that this is a problem for us. Here's the evidence that we have that this is really a problem or an opportunity for us. What do you think happens if we do nothing? Well, clients probably get dissatisfied. Okay, what happens if that occurs? Well, they stop paying us. What happens if that occurs? We start to lose money. We're not profitable. And what happens if that occurs? We have an erosion of trust. Our reputation suffers. We need to fire people, or people or talent leaves us. Okay, and what happens if that occurs? And so on and so on and so on, until basically with your leading questions, you're doing the equivalent of bringing somebody to the edge of the cliff and then letting them fall over. Because we all know, at least I hope we know, I think lawyers have gotten a little bit of a bad rap. Lawyers do not hate change more than anybody else. So let's be clever and use their aversion to risk as the reason to be innovative. Because and lawyers are excellent at worst case scenario, we can use that. Let's use that as a driving force. Instead of constantly complaining about it and treating it as a restraining force, let's have it start working for us, right? And so if avoiding risk is the reason to take action, let's go to town. Let's make it the most dramatic, over the top Bollywood production we can possibly get in terms of talking about this process and all of the horrible things that could go wrong. Because if we can start planting all those seeds of doubt, they're going to suddenly have this appetite for doing what you want them to do. I promise. So you've got a few solid options for getting started. One is, learn more, teach people, help them develop new skills, introduce new concepts, literally open up their minds, open their eyes, give them aha moments, show them case studies of what other firms have done. I'd be glad to send anybody, an excerpt of Lean Six Sigma for law firms. I know you can order the book. There's people who share their case studies in the book. I'm going to update it. So if you have a case study, I would love it if you would share it. But starting to learn together and speaking a common language is just imperative for being able to have the conversation in the first place. Others have started not with education, but with building the architecture for how we're going to do process improvement and project management work, organizational development, the actual structure, which I will say I love doing that work because, gosh, like to be the architect of a program. I have one firm where we've been working for 7 years to build their program. We're on our third version of their process improvement life cycle, including a whole project approval process. How do we surface, select, prioritize, and sometimes reprioritize our projects? We have a standing program steering committee, which is different than that project steering committee. This steering committee sees all the projects. So we know if we've got IT overburdened, we can't just keep adding projects, to their backlog if we want to get stuff done. But starting to build the program, putting in the right resources or combination of resources. I'm on their team, but I'm an external resource, but they also have internal resources. So how does that all work together? And then you can start doing project work of any magnitude. A simple project, getting people in a room together for a day, or even the longest project I've worked on has been about 18 months, including a team that we've worked all through the pandemic on their client intake process. We've actually expanded the scope. While other people were kind of narrowing their scope and saying, we'll return to this, this firm was like, no, we have a reason we're working on client intake, because we're going to cherry pick and bump up our lateral recruiting efforts. And we want these people to know we have a really good process for onboarding their new clients. That's why we're doing this. It's fundamental to our growth strategy. So we actually expanded the project to, in terms of scope, to include conflicts, which was originally out. So you can do very short term, you can do long-term projects, depending on how big the scope is. I will say, having been a client and then also done business development work, the return that you get on investing in a program with your clients, whether it's something like a certification course or some kind of workshop like the legal workout, which I'll share with you, there is something magical that happens. And there is chemistry, there is a shared experience, there is a safe space that gets created to have the conversations that people really, really want to have, but will not have because it feels confrontational. So to give them a framework and a facilitator that helps them kind of navigate through all this, well, we're just talking about it now because that's what we're supposed to do. But give them a positive direction and an outcome. There is something so much more powerful than that. And I don't think the days of chicken dinners and round tables of 10 are going to end per se, but in terms of what clients want, I mean, look at all the tender offers now, the requests for proposals, they all are asking, what are you doing with process improvement and project management, whether they mention Lean and Six Sigma specifically or not. And not only do they want to know what you're doing for your program, they want to know the clients. How are you going to help us improve the way we're doing our work? And you know what, I feel for the law firms actually, because it's not good enough to just practice law. Now you've got to do law assaulting, I think is the expression, right? But if you want to show you're invested, like you're all in with your clients, go to training together, do some of this work together. And yes, it feels a little bit like airing your dirty laundry. But as a client, I can tell you, I already know that your laundry is dirty, and I can probably pinpoint where it is dirty in ways that you cannot. So why not start with the clients? Morgan Lewis was our first firm that ever did a privately delivered yellow belt course to include clients. And they've done this a couple of different ways. They've had client teams with specific clients at each table. And then they've done one version where they've had everybody from the same client, but working on different processes at the table. We've had other firms where they've had all different clients coming in and the legal team sitting with them. There are things that have been uncovered, and they've always walked away with more work, always, because the relationship is there. And I think there's greater appreciation for the work, the legal work that is being done, and how much care there is, how much genuine care there is. So for client development, other firms are using it for marketing. Parker Poe, all of this stuff is scalable. It's not just, these big global firms, smaller regional firms are inviting clients in to do programs and projects, and then they get they've used it sometimes for press, sometimes not. Some firms have been very stealthy under the radar. But I think it's a beautiful thing. There's no reason we're seeing, all of this translate things that we used to do in person completely translates to the virtual environments. And there have been clients that have said to these firms, gosh, we can't make it to this offering, but we would love to have you come over and do this with us, on site. And the firm supports it, and they've wound up doing their very own, which is, how much would you pay to get that kind of an audience with a chief legal officer, your head of legal ops, the procurement people are in the room, like all the right people are in the room. So this idea of getting the right people in the room has always been very intriguing to me. And I was almost instantly, I didn't know that I was interested in process improvement, but almost on day one of actually practicing law, I went straight from law school to practicing in a legal department, which is a bit unusual. I think most people go, into a law firm first, but I literally was shocked at how law was practiced. I could not believe the longer we paid, the more money, the longer the firm took, the more money we paid them. What is that? That makes no sense to me. We had misaligned interests. And when were we going to start listening to people who were like the legal assistants, the administrative assistants? I mean, my administrative assistant taught me everything I needed to know about practicing law my first year. Why wasn't she in any of these meetings? She could tell you everything that was going right and things that needed to be improved. So this idea of getting, kind of that Gemba walk, go to where the value is delivered. And what would happen if we had a cross-functional team of people and we took them through a series of facilitated questions similar to a design thinking workshop, but also following the DMAIC framework, and put them through a very, very fast-paced workshop, timed exercises, taps into neuroscience. The neurons and synapses of your brain fire differently when you're doing a timed exercise. So if you're that person that works best under deadline, there's a neuroscience reason for that. So we put together the legal workout. We have won multiple awards, and more importantly, that's lovely and nice, and I'm proud of that, but I'm even happier that our clients have won awards for them too. So I wanted to show you, what going through a workshop like this can produce in very short time, 30 to 90 days, plus also creates a framework and the conditions for doing longer term work, which is good for cementing a relationship, for insulating a client forever. Because when your processes are integrated and you've cemented them, the switching costs become significantly higher and it becomes much harder to leave you, right? So we want fast improvements, and we want everybody to have that feeling like, wow, finally I was seen, finally I was heard, I got to contribute. And now I feel respected for the work that I have been doing, kind of in the dark, off to the side for a very long time. So we had Aon's Global Law Department work with one of their primary outside counsel. We picked 4 things to work on in the room. So we had 4 different teams working at 4 different tables. They were all going through the same exercises at the same time. So more evidence that even in the same room, folks using the same tool kind of came up with some different results. So we picked mergers and acquisitions, the billing process, e-discovery, and the subpoena process. And I'll tell you, the billing process was incredibly fascinating to me, because the only people that had ever had an opportunity to talk to each other, despite the fact that these two organizations were located within 3 or 4 blocks of one another in Chicago, the only people that had ever really spoken directly to each other were the two lawyers. The billing person on the firm side and the billing person or finance person on the law department side had never really had any direct contact. So when we got everybody at the table together to start talking about, well, what's the problem with billing? Well, there are delays in getting them paid. Why are there delays in getting them paid? Those two people could tell us, right? Well, the finance person in the law department said, I can tell you why. Line items are getting rejected because they have the wrong timekeeper set up. Another reason is there's the wrong matter identification, which, you know, parenthetically, you want me to trust you with handling my most sophisticated legal work, but you can't get the right matter ID or timekeeper set up? Just saying, like, don't give me some spiel about how you're detail oriented. Like, this is the experience that I'm having, right? Okay, so sorry, I need to editorialize every so often. And so, okay, let's focus on those two things. And law firm, what's driving me a little crazy about how the law department, well, they take so long to review. They have a 2-reviewer system. And by the time they ask us a question about the bill, it's 4 months later. And now I have to stop what I'm doing. I have to unwind or rewind. I can't remember what I did 4 months ago. So if we could speed up the review period, then I could give a better answer, and it would take me less time to do it. It would be less disruptive. So everybody got what they wanted. And, you know, obviously, if we're lowering the number of rejected invoices by over 40%, and we decrease the total dollar amount of rejected invoices by over 40%, who do you think wins with that, you guys? I mean, everybody wins, because I'm responsible in the law department for managing my budget. I've got to justify who I'm hiring for outside counsel. I've got to show I'm doing a good job. And the law firm gets paid more fully and faster by improving this process. So all these metrics that you're seeing, this was all within the first 60 to 90 days of their legal workout. Very, very fast results. So that's one option, doing a workshop kind of thing like that. Another thing that you could be doing is process mapping, which you definitely want to do with a cross-functional team. One of my favorite ways to do process mapping is, of course, with clients. If you're in a law department, do this with your business units. If you're in a law firm, do this with your, you know, your actual clients. And what you're looking at, this picture is actually of a map of a general counsel. We're mapping the patent application process. And the reason you've got 2 different colors under the big steps in the light yellow is that the bright yellow, the highlighter yellow, is what the law firm did, and the orange is what the law department did. And a couple of really interesting things happened. The first interesting thing is that the general counsel turned to the law firm and said, wow, I had no idea that you were doing so much of this work. I didn't really get what was involved in the due diligence piece at the very front part of the process. And I have to admit, I was thinking about pulling that work in-house. I just didn't value what you were bringing because it was invisible to me. I didn't see it. But now that I see it and now that I understand it, there is no way I'm touching that work. And I will tell you, the partners in that room were shocked. They had no idea that they had work at risk until that very moment. The other really fascinating thing that happens is that this general counsel called up his chief innovation officer, which in this particular company was his chief scientist. And he said, I'd love it if you would just, if you have a couple minutes, can you come on up and see what we're doing here? And the door opens. And I mean, this guy had like the full on lab coat with the pocket protector and like the whole thing. He really looked the part of the scientist. And he opened the door and you could tell he had the demeanor of a very serious man. He looked at the wall and his whole face lit up. He said, legal is doing process mapping? I can't believe it. What are you working on? He was instantly intrigued. And the general counsel explained, we are mapping out the patent process. And one of the things that's my goals is to get you to come to us earlier, because we know that when you come to us earlier, we have a better chance of getting our patents approved. This is the lifeblood of our company, patents and our patenting our inventions. And so the scientist said, okay, I'm interested. Where are we coming in now? And he went right to the place in the map. He said, this is where you're coming in. And here's the thing, if we can get you to come in 5 steps earlier, by our calculation, we're going to improve our patent approval rate by about 70%. And let me explain why. This, and this. So now the scientist is like, I just didn't realize till I saw it, keeping in mind 75% of the world or thereabouts are visual learners. So having a map that allows people to visualize, that can serve as a point of reference, it's good for lots of things, training, onboarding people, not just improving processes. I have clients, law firm clients, that are taking out, it doesn't need to be super fancy, but they distill these things to a formalized map. And instead of going in with a PowerPoint that has a bunch of flowery language about how wonderful their firm is and, you know, all about me, they roll out this process map and they say, this is our standard approach to doing this work. And let us explain what this means based on our understanding of what you've shared with us. And they use it to have a conversation about how we're going to be doing this work together. That is a very different way to be doing business development and client growth work. Not to mention, you know, securing that client. Thanks, Marie, for your comment too. Something similar to do with grant applications and legal office interface in the university sector. There's so many examples. So process mapping is like the lowest tech, easiest thing to do. I'm a huge fan of using sticky notes, whether they're virtual or, you know, the actual paper thing. They're very liberating because you can peel them off, move them around, do color coding. People really like it. And you can ask people, write your own steps, and then let's start putting the map together. So it works for different communication styles and personality types. You've got people with a preference for introversion, fine. Have them work quietly on their little sticky notes, and then we'll start to work together as a group. So it's a great tool. It has a lot of different applications. And often just a super easy, non-threatening way to get started with anything. because there are so many different things that need improving, like virtually everything could stand to be improved from my perspective. One of the first things that we will recommend is coming up with a way to select the things that you're going to work on. So I'm a little less interested from the get-go in hearing about what you want to improve. I'm more interested in getting to what's your thought process? How are you making the decision to pick this versus that? Help me understand that piece. Because if we can capture the way that you're thinking about things, the way you're assessing your problems and opportunities, we can distill that into some kind of a scorecard that can be used across the organization. We can also share it with people. When we're doing training, I have one firm, everybody in the firm is trained to at least a white belt level. And they have their own deck because they have their own protocols, their own forms, their own templates. So they share their project scorecard. This is how we're going to assess your projects. This is the template that we want you to submit. And we train people how to complete those things. So everybody's responsible for contributing to process improvement. Now, we also understand that no matter how innovative you think the idea is, you still need to sell it. So we want to make sure that we've left time to address any questions that you all have for, you are where you are. So whether you have a really robust program already in place, or you're just getting started with process improvement, we want to make sure you have time to ask some questions so that we can help the people with the square wheels understand the importance of hearing what we have to say, because for sure we know we have a better way, and we just want them to be able to take advantage of what we're putting out into the world. I do see a fundamental shift that is taking place. Some of it, as I alluded to earlier, is generational, right? We've got a shift, and this was underway even pre-pandemic. But in many ways, and I certainly take the pandemic extremely seriously. However, I am also a person that says constraints are a forcing function for creativity. And so when we've got boundaries and we know what they are, that's helpful to us, right? And we know that I have a 23-year-old, almost 24-year-old, and a 21-year-old. They think the way that we approach work is absolutely nuts. So they want to be appreciated as human beings. They want a very different style of communication. They want the opportunity to contribute their skill sets, their experiences, and they want to function and behave and collaborate in a way that is very different from the top-down hierarchical, step approach to everything. And so, I see law is going through a very fundamental change, which is wonderful. It's surprising to me. I mean, the rate of change when I first got out of law school, I would describe as glacial. And that was maybe being, overselling it even a little bit. But now change is occurring so rapidly. So it's kind of like, what's our response going to be? I think there's a beauty in process improvement. It allows us a way to both honor tradition and capture it even, and carry it forward in a way that is authentic and builds on the many years, there's none of this bifurcation of, is law a profession or a business? There's no reason it can't be both. It's something that people practice. People take years, decades to get really good at what they do. So how do we make sure that we are capturing all of that wonderful stuff that people are walking around with? Not so that we can, oh gosh, I just, if there's anything, I wish we could stop using a couple of terms. Non-lawyer is one of them. There's no non-anything in my world. It's just so horrible. And if we could also stop saying, what if that person gets hit by a whatever? Like, I'm all about, like, what happens if that person inherits millions of dollars and buys a private island? Like, how are we going to make sure that we capture all that good stuff that they figured out how to do, and compare it and share it? So this idea of fail often to succeed sooner is in one of the videos that we always show in our Yellow Belt program. But failing, it sounds a little like failing is just part of success. But how do we create a safe place to fail? It's not enough to just tell somebody, oh, we've got to make it okay to fail. Actually, it's not okay to fail. If I'm your client, I'm not supporting failing while I'm paying you to do some important work for me. But what I want to do is I want you to encourage some degree of experimentation where we have safety guards put up. I want that as a client. And I think most clients want the same thing, right? And I will tell you, I think this is the most exciting, rewarding, both strategic and tactical work that you can do. It absolutely is transformation work. Not only because you're transforming and changing the process, but you are fundamentally changing the way people work together. And to me, one of the most rewarding things is when sometimes I don't even have to wait till the end of a project, but when people say, this was the most fun, this was like the best thing that I've ever done in my professional life, and I'm so glad I had an opportunity to do it. They are better. The organization is better. The client is better. It's like wins across the board. So I certainly hope I've given you enough of an idea or a series of ideas that spark some thinking, give you, oh, wow, I think I want to try that too. I would love it if you would do that. I would love it if you would share what you try, what you decide to do, what were the results, like, why would you not do this? I absolutely encourage you. I'm going to put my LinkedIn, a link to my LinkedIn. I encourage you to connect with me. If there's a resource that I can steer you to, or if I may serve as a resource to you, I hope you will let me know. But mostly, I just want you to try some of this stuff, because I think you'll find it's additive to what you're already doing. And I wish you much success with it. So I do want to open up the discussion and encourage you to ask questions, either in the chat or in the forum itself.
Thanks so much, Catherine. That was a brilliant session.
Thank you.
I just love how the approach that you've taken is really combining so many of those important concepts and yet bringing them together in a really usable, easy to use framework. So really, really appreciate that. Folks, as I mentioned at the outset, this is the first in what we hope will be a series of events for this group, but we also really want those to be focused on what matters to you. So please be sure to contact us and reach out about topics that you would like to explore in these sort of presentations or workshops as well. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you also, everyone, for attending. It was just lovely to see you here as well.